Before you start this video, I want to just kind of give you a heads up. For those of you who are already experienced with like Bootstrap, HTML, CSS, that kind of stuff, I would say, most of this video you don't have to watch. So you're probably looking at the time of this video and thinking, wow, that's like really long. But if you're not a beginner and you know like a lot of this Bootstrap stuff, HTML stuff, you can skip probably 80% of this video. Just watch. There's a point in this video what I'm going to tell you that you can skip. I think it's around 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in or something like that. So watch up to that point, and then when I start like just working on the header and building the HTML for it and working on the footer and building the HTML for it, you can just skip to the next video because there's really no need. If you already know Bootstrap and you already know how to build views, there's really no need for you to watch it. So just as a heads up, I don't want you to waste a bunch of time if you don't need to watch something. So let's get into the video. In this video, as I said, we're going to work on the header and the footer, and we're going to get some resources for icons on our website. And I'll show you what I mean instead of just talking about it. So if you go to openchat.xyz, again, we have this header with some icons, and we have this footer, which is kind of really basic. Now these icons up here are actually provided free by Google. You can go to their material design website. So Google, I guess you could just search Google icons and look for icons material design at material.io. And these are some kind of like general icons that are good to use that follow Google's design guidelines. And these are all free. So you just have to include the resource into your website and then you can use them. So we can get access to all of these icons, and then using them is very, very simple. I'll show you how to use them. So to get started with it and use them, get those resources on your website, first we would visit their Git repository here. Now I'm going to scroll down and they should have a link to a style sheet right here. So we don't have to provide these resources in our project. They're already hosted on a server somewhere. So we can just download them basically by applying this link to our project. So now I'm going to go to the project and I can paste it up at the top of base.html. So that's going to load all of those icons from a server somewhere that's being hosted by Google. So they're nice enough to host it for us on a content delivery network, and then we can just download them. So now I can use those icons. So like, for example, say I wanted to use an icon in my home.html page. Let's just look up one of those icons. So if I go to say I want to use this icon, I would just click on it, go to selected icon, and here's how I would use it on my website. So just pressing Control C on there, going back to the project, and I can just paste it in next to this item here. So it should say item, and then it should show the icon in line with that text. So pressing Control S, let's go to our development environment, refresh it, and boom, there is that icon. So now we have access to this massive library of icons. And if you want to search for like something specific, you could just filter by name. Like say you wanted to look for something to do with like an account screen, you could search accounts and it kind of filters. We're going to be using these in the project for any of the icons. So now what I'm going to do is get some other resources that we're going to use. So I'm going to bring over the Git project for this project. So Coding with Mitch chat, and I've gone into static and then the folder Coding with Mitch. I'll go to the root project directory just so you can kind of see it. So if you go to the root project directory, go into static, and then just go into Coding with Mitch, these are the image resources that we're going to be using in this project. One is just a dummy image, so it's just like a blank kind of gray image of a person. Then we have my logo, which is right here, and this is the 1080 by 1080 version. That's why the name is logo 1080 1080. And excuse me, and then we have logo 250 250, and it's transparent. So this is a 250 by 250 and has a transparent background. These images we need for our project. So what you need to do is you need to click on each one of these. So I'll click that, click that, click that, and go here and just do right click and save as, or click on download, whatever you prefer. Click on save as and just do dummy image and save that to your downloads directory. And now I want to do the same thing with this one. So save image as, save that into my downloads, right click, save image as, and save that into downloads. So now I'm done with downloading those files. Now I want to move those files into the static directory for the project. So going into the project and then going into source, going into static. Now I'm going to create a folder named Coding with Mitch. And now inside of Coding with Mitch, I'm going to drag in all of those images. So there's that one, drag in that one, drag in that one. So there's those images. Now, whenever we add new files, we always need to collect static, as I told you in previous lectures. So Python manage.py collect static. And what that's going to do when I press enter is it's going to move those files into the static content delivery network. So you should see a folder generated in here named Coding with Mitch. So I'll move it up there just so you can actually see it. So I press enter. It should ask me, are you sure you want to overwrite existing static files? I'm going to say yes, click enter, and then boom, there's that folder that gets generated. And now I have access to these images. So what that has done is if I run the server now and I go to my source code for the project, and I wanted to use one of those images. Say I wanted to use it right here for some reason. I could create an image tag, and inside the image tag, I could load the static files. So making sure to have load static at the top here. So load static. Now that might actually need to be above base.html. I'm not sure, but let's load static. And then I can choose one of those images. So coding with Mitch / let's take a look. We can use, I don't know, the logo 1080 by 1080. So actually that's going to be really big. Let's use the dummy image. So dummy image.png. This is just an example after all. Now I'm pressing Control C to save that. Let's go to the development server, refresh that, and looks like I get a problem. Is my server running? Oh, that's because the static is at the top. That should not be at the top. I wasn't sure about that, but let's just fix that. Press Control S to save that. Now let's open up our development server again, and then boom, there's that image. So obviously it's not formatted to look nice. I just wanted to give you an example of how we could now use that image in our website. All right, so now we're going to build the header and the footer for the project. So I'm going to delete this because that is very ugly. And I'm going to build the header and the footer. So if you look at openchat.xyz, this is going to be the header at the very top. We're going to build this so that it's completely the way it looks right now in openchat.xyz. And of course the footer, which is relatively simple. So let's do the footer first. So I can close this Git and close this Bootstrap link, and let's go to our code, and let's go into footer.html, and we're going to build this. So as I said, this is a very simple one. First, I'm going to add some styling to our footer. I'm going to do dot footer, so creating a styling for a class named footer. Now the minimum height for this is going to be 100 pixels. I'm setting a minimum height because I don't want the footer ever to be smaller than this amount. Now I'll create a div, and inside the div, I'll do class. Oh, actually here, by the way, before I do this, I should mention that if you already know Bootstrap and you already know kind of how the column system works and how the styling all works, you could just skip the rest of this video and just paste in the code. So if you already know and you don't, because all I'm going to be doing for the rest of this video is writing out HTML and using Bootstrap. So if you want to just skip to the next video, if you already are comfortable with that stuff, just go to the source code, copy footer.html, put that into the project, go to the source code, copy header.html, put that into the project, and then move on to the next lecture. I don't want you to sit here and waste your time if you're already very comfortable with HTML and Bootstrap and how to design the grid system and all that kind of stuff. But for those of you who have never done it before, stay here and watch, and I'm going to go through this pretty slowly, I would say. So the video is going to be quite long, but if you don't know it, then this is going to be some great examples for you. Let's get back to it. All right, since we're going to be using flexbox, first we always have to do deflex. Now I'm going to define a row so that we have columns. Now in this case, it doesn't really matter because there's not going to be much in the footer, but just for kind of habit's sake, I'm going to do flex row. Now I'm going to do align items center, which will align all of the children inside of here to the center of the screen. I'm adding that class named footer that I've added up here so that it has a minimum height of 100 pixels. I'm going to say I want the background to be white, and I want a shadow to be, I want a large shadow. So if you take a look at openchat.xyz and you scroll down to the bottom, notice this kind of has a shadow. I want to create that shadow, and I can use a Bootstrap class known as shadow-large to add that shadow. Now I want to do margin top to 4, just to add some more spacing there. Now inside of the class, I'm going to create a P element. I'm going to add some attributes, just actually margin auto so that it gets centered correctly. Remember in the previous video, I told you if you ever can't get something to center and it seems like it should work, try adding margin auto so it automatically centers, because that's how Bootstrap centers things. It centers it by applying a margin. So sometimes you have to tell it that, hey, just use the margin, whatever you need to use as a margin. So I'm going to call this Coding with Mitch chat and just say 2020 because that's when this is being built. So if I press Control S and I go to our development environment and I refresh it, go down to the bottom, there's that nice footer down at the bottom. So now for the header. Now the header is a lot more involved. There's going to be a lot more with the header. You know, you have a couple elements. You know what? I'm going to actually draw it out for you because I think that will be very helpful. I got this new tablet that I can draw on, so I'm going to try and like explain using the tablet for those of you who have no experience. I think this is going to be really helpful. By the way, if anyone is interested in buying one of these things, I'm going to put a link down below to Amazon to this thing. They're really excellent. It's basically a monitor that you can draw on, which you're going to see lots of examples throughout this course of me using it. But if you're interested, check it out. It's a Gaomon product, and so far I've had a really great experience with it. It's super easy to use. But yeah, I'll talk more about it as we go through it, and I show you the different things that it can do. Now let's draw some diagrams. So at the top here, basically we're trying to build this header. This is the thing that we are trying to build, and we're going to include that in our base.html file. Now this is going to be different depending on the screen size. For this screen size, we want to have flex column here. So I'm going to write flex, we want to have flex row, my bad. We want to have flex row. We want to have flex row because this is going to be a column. This is going to be a column. I guess I should circle these. So that's a column, that's a column. This is going to be a column. This is a column, and this is a column. So we have a bunch of columns. Column 1, column 2, column 3, 4, 5. Remember when I talked about flex row and flex column in the previous video, when you have row, it's going to give you columns. When you have flex column, it's going to give you rows. In this case, we want columns, so it's flex row. So when we're talking about smaller screens, let me shrink this. We don't want this to be able to be viewed on mobile because I'm going to be building an app for this. So usually on a website, you want to make it responsive so that if it gets small, this is what it would look like on a phone, and you would have it, you would have this usable. What we want for our header is we want it to look like this. So basically we want to do the reverse of what we did. We want to have this as like row 1, row 2, row 3. So let's take a look. So here we would have our flex, and this whole thing would be flex row. This will be flex row because we have column 1, column 2. Let me just circle it. Column 1, column 2, and column 3. So that's how we're going to be designing it. We're going to have two different scenarios. One for a full screen, which would look like this, and then one for a small screen, which would look like this. Okay, so let's go into header.html and let's build this. So first, let's write load static because we are going to be using some images later. So I want to make sure I load those static files. Now I want to create that header. So the first one is going to be kind of like the top level parent section. So this will be D flex, and we don't even need flex column or flex row. It doesn't matter because we're going to be designing for two different scenarios here. One's going to be for medium screens and larger, so medium plus screens, and then it'll be for everything smaller than that. So it'll be, let's see here, this will be small, I guess. Small and minus screen. So basically they would be mobile. So we have like regular size screens, and then we have something that would be mobile. And that was the two different images. This would be like the small and the mobile, and this would be medium and bigger. Those are the two options here. And just to take a look at openchat.xyz, just so you can kind of see that in action again, this would be like, your regular size, your medium plus, and as you shrink this smaller and smaller and smaller, eventually you get to the small size and the view will change. That's what we want to happen here. So that's what we're going to program in. Oh, I just realized that I made a mistake in the drawing. So this drawing right here, I actually wrote flex row. That should be a flex column. So let me just erase that just to kind of clear up any confusion. This should be flex column because you have rows. You have row 1, row 2, row 3. My bad, I just wrote the wrong thing there. Sorry if I confused anybody. All right, let's go back to the code. So now I'm just going to add some default styling to this first kind of parent section here. I'm going to add padding. So P3 will apply level 3 padding. It's not 3 pixels. It's a Bootstrap thing. I'm not sure. It goes up to 4, so you can use padding 1, padding 2, padding 3, and padding 4. I'm using padding 3. I'm not sure how many pixels exactly that is, but you can take a look at it and play around with it yourself. Now I want to do pixels or padding in the X direction. I only want to apply padding in the X direction on medium screens and larger, and I want to apply padding of 4. I want to do margin bottom of 4, and I want to do background white. So background white, that just gets a white background, and I want to do border bottom and shadow small. So I'm applying a shadow, adding a border on the bottom, If we take a look at Open Chat, you can see there's a light kind of border, there's a shadow on the bottom, and there's some padding. So I'm adding all of that kind of padding on the outside with all these properties. So by default, there's level 3 padding around the entire thing. If the screen is medium or smaller, there's going to be an extra padding in the X direction for level 4 padding. Margin bottom always, background white, border bottom, shadow small. Okay, now the medium screens. Let's create a div and add the classes. So by default, I want to not show this. And you can do that by doing D none. That basically makes it invisible under normal circumstances. But then I can add another caveat. I can say D medium flex. So this, if the screen is medium or larger, D none will not be used, D flex will be used. Basically, I'm saying use D flex if the screen is medium or larger. That's what I'm saying with those two classes. This is always going to be flex row, so we're going to have columns. Remember from our diagram here, this is going to be flex row because we want columns. So flex row, I want to do margin Y auto, so it's always going to be centered in the Y direction. I want to do flex grow 1. I'm going to talk about that later. And align items center. So what flex grow means is you should use the most space possible. So if I didn't use, I'll actually come back to this later and I'll remove it so you can see it in action and see what the difference is with flex grow and without flex grow. Now I'm going to add an H5 element to say home. So that's going to be that home section here. That's going to be this text right here. We're working on so now we're working on the different columns, column 1, column 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this H5 element is going to be column 1 essentially. Now I want to add a class attribute to this and add some styling. I want to do margin right 3 to give it some spacing to the search text that's going to be right next to it. Font weight normal, so just changing what the font looks like, and justify content start. So that's going to move it all the way to the left side. So this is start if you're curious, and then this would be end. So if I said justify content end, it would be on this end. Justify content start goes on that end. So I want it to be on the left, so start is obviously my choice. Now I want to add a link inside of here. So I'm actually going to cut that, go to the next line, add an ahref, and I'm going to load the home URL. So I can do URL, this is a Django thing by the way, and just write home. And I'm going to explain that in just a second here. So I want to add a class to this first. So class equals P2. So I'm adding level 2 padding around the entire thing and setting text to dark. So what is this URL thing? Well, in Django, you can define like a URL shortcut, I guess you can say. So what I'm saying is look in all of the URLs that I've defined and look for the one named home. So if you go into our project and go into urls.py, notice I gave the name of this URL, I gave it a name of home. So what it's going to do is actually look through all my URLs and find the one for home. And now if that is clicked, it's going to take me to the home screen. So let me press Control S and let's actually refresh this and take a look at what we got. So there's our header starting to come together. We have our shadow, everything's kind of centered. And if I click on this, it will take me to the home screen. So no matter which URL I'm at, maybe I was, it doesn't really matter. If I was to click this, it would automatically take me back to the home screen. We don't have any other views to like give a demo of right now. So all I can show you is that when I click that, it takes to the home screen. Now I want to build the next element here. So the next row, remember this is row 1. Now we're going to work on row 2, which is this kind of search view. So for this, I'm going to create a form because we're going to be capturing some input and then submitting that input to do a search. So class equals search bar, and we're not going to be like setting this up so that it's going to work yet. I'm just setting it up so that it's kind of ready to work later on. So giving it a class of search bar, that's a Bootstrap class. I'm saying justify content start, so it goes all the way to the left, just like I did with this home section here. Now inside here, I want to do some input. So one input, the type is going to be text. The class will be form control. This just gives some default styling. This again is a Bootstrap class. Name will be Q. That's the name of the parameter that gets appended to the URL when you submit the form. But we're going to talk more about that later when we actually get this form working. And I'm going to do ID Q large. And there's a reason I'm appending this name large. And I'll talk about that later too when we work on later in this video actually when we work on the small screen section here. Placeholder will be search. So that's just what's displayed in the search. So I press Control S, go back to our development environment, refresh it, boom, there's our little search view. And I think if I press something in here, yeah, it will actually go to this URL. So remember that Q variable that I defined? If you look at the source code, name is Q. That means that the name of the parameter here is Q. If I change this to, it doesn't matter what I changed it to, search param. If I refresh that, go back to development, type something out, notice that search param is now that keyword that it sets there. I'm going to leave this to Q. So if I get rid of this and go back, search, there's Q. So this search isn't doing anything right now. This is going to be set up later in the course. I just want to make sure that I have like the HTML part all ready to go. Okay, so next we're going to work on the rest of this. So this section right here, this is going to be a lot more complicated than these. These were quite easy. So again, we want to do our next column. So column 3, column 4, and column 5. Those are what we're going to do. We're using a lot of like little styling in here, which is going to make it a little trickier. So I could actually label this for you too. This would be like column 1, this would be column 2, and then now we're going to do column 3. And again, if you're very comfortable with this stuff already, I encourage you just to skip to the next video because this stuff is very basic if you know Bootstrap and HTML and all that stuff. Okay, so column 3, what is that going to look like? We have 3 columns. This would be column 1, column 2, column 3. And they all have kind of unique styling. You need a kind of a circular gray background. You need an icon in the middle. And then in the top, you need kind of like a notification positioned in awkwardly kind of up to the right. Now, we're not going to do the positioning for this yet. We're going to do that later in the course. But for now, I just want to get these kind of general columns in here and get it looking sort of like this. So what we want to use here is we want to use our regular like flex row so that we have columns. But if we look at the Bootstrap guide, so if you just go to get Bootstrap, get Bootstrap, and you go up to documentation and you type in drop downs, this is what we are going to use. We want to use a drop down, because that's what this uses. If I click here, that creates a drop down. If I click here, that creates a drop down. That's what we're going to use here. So first, let's write some logic because we need to. We have a couple kind of different cases here. So I'm going to create a div and do div deflex and do flex row. Remember, because we want columns, so we're doing flex row. And actually, I want to do flex row reverse. I want to do flex row reverse because if you look here, all of these are on the right side of the screen. Flex row would have put them right here, but flex row reverse will put them kind of to the opposite side of what the default is. So that's why we're using flex row reverse here. And then I want to do flex row 1 because I want it to occupy the rest of this space here. So I'm saying flex row reverse, start on this side of the screen and occupy the rest of the space. I don't want this search coming all the way to the end or anything like that. I want this to occupy the remaining space. So let's go back to here and see what's next. So now we would add the navigation. So here, this is about where we would want to add this. So if I click this is kind of like what we want. We want to click on this and then we want a drop down to come down. We don't want this arrow and we don't want it to be a button, but generally speaking, this is kind of what we want. So I'm going to copy that and go back to our project here, and I'm going to create a nav element. I know that's not in the documentation, but I'm just going to add that. Now I'm going to do some Django logic here. I'm going to say if request.user is authenticated, then we want to show a different view, and we want to have an else case, and we want to then end that logic. So end if. So this is how you write logic in your templates with Django. Basically what I'm doing is I'm checking if the user is currently authenticated, because we have 2 different views if they're authenticated or not. If they're authenticated, they want to see this. If they're not authenticated, they want to see the login and the register button. So those are the 2 different views that we're going to work on. Login and register is the easiest, so let's do that one first. So that's going to be the else case. So if they're authenticated, it's going to be in here. Otherwise, they're going to be down here. So if that's the case, it's pretty simple. I just want to do a link that takes them to, the login screen. And then the other one would just be a link that takes them to the register screen. So register. And I'm going to add some styling to these. So I'll do padding 2 and text dark for the login. And then the other one will be class equals, and we'll do button primary. Or button outline primary, there we go. And if you're wondering about these number signs, I have these here just as placeholders, obviously because we haven't built the login screen yet, we haven't built the register screen yet, so just adding these as placeholders. So if I press Control S to save that, and I make sure that I'm not authenticated, so if I click on log out here, and I go to the kind of default view, there we go. We have our home, we have our search, we have login, and we have register. Now keep in mind, if I click these, they do nothing, obviously, because we haven't set those up yet. But now we can build the case for if they are authenticated. So let's work on that. So here's where I'm going to paste in that stuff that I copied from the Bootstrap documentation. So pasting that in, and I have a bunch of stuff here, which I'm just going to format to make it look a little better. There we go. So we have a drop down, but I want to add some extra styling to this. I want to say drop left so that the menu drops to the left. I'll show you what I mean. So here, notice if here, I'll actually just log in really quick. So here, if I click on one of these drop downs, notice the drop down goes to the left of where I click, goes to the left, goes to the left. That's what drop down left is going to do. Now show and then add some padding, some default padding. Now I want to do kind of 3 groups. So I'm going to delete this button because we don't want to have a button. Each one is going to be kind of a little bit different. So I'm going to do div and class deflex flex row because we want to have columns. And I want to add 3 cases. So I'm creating one big drop down. They're all going to drop down left, and we're going to have 3 different columns. So I'm going to cut this, pressing Control X. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to paste that back in because it's not even really super useful. I should have grabbed a different example from the Bootstrap documentation. But anyway, we have 3 cases here. I'll write some comments in here just so you can see. This will be like the notifications, or I guess the chat notifications. The second one is going to be the general notifications, and the third one is going to be the account. So those are the 3 sections here. So chat notifications, general notifications, and then account. Those are the 3 sections that we're building here. So the first one, let's do class button group, and do drop left. Now inside of here, I want to do div and class. This is going to be a long class, deflex, notifications, icon, container. So we haven't built that class yet. That's going to be built later in the course when we do some styling. Rounded circle to make this a circular kind of div. I want to do align items to the center, margin right 3, and that should be everything for the class. Now I'm going to set an ID to this because we need to have an ID in order to toggle it to show the menu and hide the menu. So ID, it'll be chat notifications or notification drop down toggle. You always have to have an ID if you want to toggle anything. Now I'm going to do data, an attribute called data toggle, and do drop down. That's a required attribute. And now inside of here, I can put what I want this to look like. So if we look at open chat, what do I want this to look like? It's got to have this gray background. It's got to have a chat kind of icon here. It's going to have this red number for counting the number of notifications. So first will be the count. So give this an ID of ID chat notifications count. And we're not going to set a count to it yet because that's going to be done later. Much later in the course, actually towards the end. I want to give it a class of notify badge, and we're going to leave this empty because obviously there's no notifications by default. Next, we're going to create another span. This is going to be the material icon. So class deflex material icons. You should know how to use this because I showed you an example earlier. Notifications material icon. That's a class that we're going to create later to add some extra styling to this, but for now, just kind of leaving that for later. And then align items center, and this is going to be chat. So now where did I get this? Where did I get this icon? Well, if we go to our material icons and I search for chat, so if you just go up here and search, press enter and search chat, that's going to be this. You can select any of these, but I chose to use this one. And if you want to learn how to use it, then you just copy this span, which is exactly what we have here. Material icons for the class, and then adding in chat. So it's going to be that chat icon. Now we need a drop down that's going to be toggled. Now for now, this is going to be an empty container because they're going to be added programmatically later, but we just want to have it kind of as a placeholder for now. So scrollable menu, because it's going to be a scrollable list of notifications, labeled by equals ID chat notifications, notification drop down toggle, actually drop down toggle. And then I want to give this an ID. So what I just did there is I defined this as the thing that's going to toggle this. So that's why these have matching IDs. or this has an ID and this has a labeled by attribute saying that this is going to toggle this open. And now I want to give this its own unique ID. So ID chat notifications container. And I got to give this an ID because later, like I said, we're going to be appending notifications programmatically to this. So that's one group. That is the first one. If I press Control S and I save that, and I was to look at this, and let me actually log in so I'm authenticated. So let's go to the admin, log in, and then go back to the home screen. Notice, there we go. There's our little chat notification. Now it doesn't look like it should at the end product, obviously, because we have to add more styling to that. Like I said, there's this notifications icon container that's going to be add some styling. There's a notifications material icon class that's going to add some styling. But for now, this is good enough for a starting point. Now I'm going to copy this whole kind of button group drop left section and paste it down into general notifications. And this is going to be mostly the same with just a couple different classes. So notifications icon container is going to be the same. We want to change this ID to notification drop down toggle. So ID notification drop down toggle, because it's a totally different one for toggling. And now I want to change this ID to ID general notifications count. It's not the same as chat notifications. It's a totally different thing. And I want to change this to notifications. So if you go to the material icons again and just search for like notifications. Where's the one? This is the one right here that we're using. So the usage word is notifications, and that's what I have right here. And I have material notifications, material icon, and material icons. Now, of course, I need to have this ID matching with this ID because this is going to be toggling this. And I need to change this to ID general notifications container. So now we have our second one for general notifications. If I press Control S on that and go back to our website, there we have chat, and there we have the general notifications. Now the last one is going to be for the account. Now I'm not even going to copy this because it's going to be quite different than the other two. So div class, I want to do button, group, and drop left. That's probably the only thing that they're going to have in common. Now I want to do image and add a bunch of properties. So just like the other classes that we added so far in this dropdown, I'm going to add a class that we will be creating later. So this account image class for styling, we're going to be building that later. Now I want to do rounded circle to make it round. Margin, auto, D, block, drop down, toggle. The next attribute is going to be the ID. So ID profile links. Next will be the data toggle attribute. So data toggle, and set that equal to drop down. Next will be aria has pop up, and set that equal to true. And again, all this can be found on the Bootstrap documentation. They have great examples. You could pretty much just copy and paste their examples and just change it to fit your needs. So area expanded, we'll do false. And we have source, which is going to be the default image. So of course I have load static up at the top here. So I'm going to write static and look for coding with Mitch and look for that dummy image that we loaded, I believe in the previous video or the one before that, just to make sure that something is showing there. Then some alt text. So this is like a description for what is being showed. This is just the coding with Mitch logo. And I want to set a width of 40 pixels and a height of also 40 pixels. Now I want to add the drop down items, the things that are going to show in the event that they click. I'll do drop down dash menu, aria labeled by equals ID profile links. It's going to be this ID right here. So it's defining how this thing is going to be toggled. And now I want to add some items to this. So we're going to do two Ahrefs. So the first one will be the account screen. So just write account. And of course, we haven't built this URL yet. So I'm just going to add a placeholder there and add some styling to this. This will be drop down item, and I'll copy that. And this one will be the log out. So log out. Two drop down items. Both of them don't do anything for now because we haven't built those screens yet. So pressing Control S, let's go to the development environment. And there we go. We have messages, we have the notifications, and we have the account drop down. Now, if the drop downs aren't working, like if you're clicking here, you might want to right click and go to inspect and take a look and see if you can find any console errors. Here it says that Bootstrap's JavaScript requires jQuery. So here it's having issues loading bootstrap.bundle.min.js, which is one of the files in our base.html. So right here. So I remember a couple of videos ago I said I wasn't sure where to put these, and I've put them different places. Also, because when you run this locally using Git, I think it caches some of the resources, and when you switch branches, it can mess up that cache. So right now, it's not able to load jQuery, which is needed to load these. So if you're getting the same issue as me, I would try copying this and maybe putting it into some of your files. Like if I put it up to the top here, press Control S. I wonder if that will load. No, both are also saying that now it's just getting an error twice. So I think what's happening to me right now is there's some kind of a caching error. I had this, oh, it looks like my camera is kind of crooked. I had this issue come up before when I was developing the website, and yeah, whenever I switch branches with Git, sometimes it seems like it messes up the cache or something with the resources that get loaded. So I'm going to pause the video here and switch branches and switch back. For some reason, that seems to resolve the problem. So I'll see you in about a second. Okay, so here I am back. All I did was literally switch to my master branch and then switch back to the branch that I was on. And now take a look, it's working. See, if I refresh, notice no JavaScript errors. And if I click up here, it is showing the menus like it should be. So I don't know, you might have ran into that issue, you might have not. I just want to make sure I showed you because it's kind of a weird thing that just happens sometimes, it seems like. But as you can see, it is working now. So now we've got this working with large screens, but we need to work with small screens. So if I go to our project and I look at it and I shrink this down to a certain size, notice the header goes away completely. So we need a different kind of case for when the screen is small. So let's work on that. So remember up here I have D none and then D medium flex. So it's only going to show if the screen is medium or larger. So we need basically the opposite down here. I need to have something showing if the screen is small or smaller. So it's small or extra small. So I want to do div and add a class up here, and this class will be D flex, D medium none, flex column, margin Y auto. So it's going to center it in the Y direction, and then align items center. So now the first kind of element here is going to be the home screen. So I'm going to do H5 just like we did before. I'll do class font weight normal and write home, actually inside of an ahref. So I'll go to the next line, do ahref, write home in here, and then do that same home URL that we did before. So URL, single quotations, and then do home to search up that basic home URL. And I'm going to add a little bit of styling to this, just like I did with the other one. So padding 2 and do text dark. So exactly the same as we have on the large screen. Same thing up here. Now I want to do the search view. So I can copy this, grab that search form again, come down here. Remember, we're doing deflex and flex column. So we have rows. So like this is going to be row 1. And then down below, that's going to be row 2. That's the one that we're going to work on now. So if we look at the production website, if I was to shrink this down to a small screen, notice how the header changes. So now we have row 1, that's row 2, and then we have row 3 here. So that's the look that we're trying to achieve with this. Now I'm going to change this to IDQ large. This isn't going to be apparent to you why I'm doing this, but it will be apparent to you later when we actually do the form submission and we're able to search for users. So just for now, just kind of humor me and write it in there and it'll become obvious later on. So now we have row number 3. Well, row number 3 is going to contain the account stuff. So actually, I should be able to just copy this from up here. So what I'm going to do is copy this entire nav div here. So copying everything inside of the nav, and I'm just going to delete a whole bunch of stuff. First, I'll add some class to this. So deflex, flex row reverse, and flex row 1 to occupy the entire space. Now I'm going to paste in the nav and delete a whole bunch of stuff. So the first is these two elements up here. So these two button groups for the chat notifications and for the general notifications, I can just delete those completely. And then this if-else logic, has to stay. So if they are authenticated, I basically just want to show the user, give the user the option to go to their account or log out. And if they're not authenticated, the user has the ability to either log in or register. Okay, so that should be it. I'm going to press Control S on that. Going to come to our website, refresh it. So right now I am authenticated. So let me go ahead. Let me shrink the view first of all and see if that works. So if I shrink it, Boom, that's exactly what we want. If I click here, I can go to the account or log out, which doesn't do anything right now, remember, because we don't have those screens built. If I click on home, it takes me to the home screen. If I search something, it will put that up into the top there. Now I'm going to go to the admin and log out. So now I'm going to go, now that I'm logged out, I can go back to the home screen and boom, there we go. That is, well, that's almost what we want it to look like actually. This needs a little bit of padding added to it. Looks like this is too close to the top. There should be some spacing there. So if I go back to our source code and go up here, we have left, let's add it right here. So this will be P2 and do margin top 2. That should add a little bit of margin. Oh, we need to add, let's add margin 2 down here. So margin 2 to the register button. There we go. Now those come down a little bit. So that's good. That is that's basically what our header should look like. That's what we want it to look like for the rest of the course. If I log in and I go back to the home screen, yep, that looks good too. That looks good. So we have both cases for whether the user is looking at a small screen or medium or larger. Both of those are being handled. We also have our different scenarios for if they're authenticated or they're not. If they are authenticated, then they would get option to go to the account screen or log out. If they're not, then they have an option to register or log in. So now that we have kind of our basic template set up, we have our basic view set up, now we're ready to finally start working on the Django stuff, or like, I guess the back end stuff. And we're gonna start building a custom user model. So we're gonna take the basic Django model, we're gonna extend it so that it can do extra things, hold a profile image, hide their email if they want to, also use their email to log in as opposed to using a username. So I'll see you in that next video.